I never thought falling for someone could feel like breaking every rule I didn't even know existed. The first day at a new school is always tough, but this one felt different, heavier somehow. Maybe it was the way everyone seemed to already know each other, or maybe it was the cold stare from the principal as I walked through the front doors. I kept my head down, clutching my schedule like it was some kind of lifeline. My backpack felt heavier than usual, weighed down not just with books, but with nerves and that strange sense of being watched. I wasn't used to moving around so much, but my mom's job made it necessary. Every time she got transferred, we packed up and started over. This time was no different, or so I thought. The classroom was loud when I walked in, kids laughing, chatting, passing notes. No one noticed me at first. I found an empty seat near the back, trying to disappear into the noise. But then he walked in. Ethan. The name came later, but in that moment, all I saw was someone who looked completely at ease, like he belonged there in a way I never would. He had this calm confidence about him, the kind that made you want to watch without being caught looking. He smiled at the teacher, said something funny, and the class laughed. I didn't laugh, but something inside me shifted. A small part of me relaxed, like maybe this place wouldn't be so bad after all. We weren't assigned to sit together, but somehow we ended up next to each other during group work. He turned to me first, asking my name like it actually mattered. I told him, and he smiled like he liked the sound of it. That smile stayed with me long after class ended. We talked more than we should have, ignoring the assignment completely. He asked where I was from, what I liked, if I hated uniforms as much as he did. His voice was soft but sure, like he knew exactly who he was. I couldn't say the same for myself. Over the next few days, I started noticing things. How his eyes lit up when he laughed. How he always carried a book in his bag, even when no one else did. How sometimes, when our hands brushed by accident while passing paper, his lingered just a second too long. I told myself it was nothing. Just friendly. Just curiosity. But deep down, I knew better. There was something about him that made me feel seen in a way I'd never felt before. And I wasn't sure if I loved it, or feared it. But then there were the other looks, the ones from Mr. Langley, the principal. He always seemed to be watching. Not just me, but me and Ethan. At first, I thought it was just his nature. Principals are supposed to be observant, right? But the way he stared, like he was waiting for us to slip up, gave me chills. It wasn't until later that I realized he already knew. Or at least, he suspected. One afternoon, after class, I stayed behind to ask the teacher a question. When I finally left, the hallway was mostly empty. I heard footsteps behind me and turned to see Mr. Langley standing a few feet away, arms crossed, expression unreadable. He didn't say anything at first. Just watched me. Then, in a low voice, he said, "You should be careful who you spend your time with." I froze. My heart pounded, but I forced a nod and walked away quickly, pretending I hadn't just been warned about something I didn't even understand yet. That night, I lay awake thinking about Ethan. About how his smile made me feel warm in places I didn't know I could feel. About how, for the first time in a long time, I felt like I belonged somewhere. But I also thought about Mr. Langley's words. About the way he looked at me. Like he already knew what I was trying so hard not to admit to myself. By the end of the week, I still hadn't figured out what any of it meant. All I knew was that I wanted to be around Ethan again. I wanted to hear his laugh, feel his presence beside me, catch those little moments where our eyes met longer than they should have. And maybe, just maybe, he felt it too. What I didn't know was that everything was already starting to fall apart. Before I could even understand what was happening, the world around us was already shifting. And soon, there would be no hiding from it. I told myself it was nothing. But we both knew, something had changed. It started with small things, the way Ethan waited for me outside my classroom, how he always seemed to know when I needed someone to sit with at lunch, the way his hand brushed mine just a little too often when we passed notes. At first, I convinced myself it was all in my head. That I was reading too much into everything because I wanted something that wasn't really there. But then came the moments I couldn't ignore. The way his eyes held mine a second longer than they should have during group work. The way he smiled only at me, like he had a secret he wasn't ready to share with anyone else. And worst of all, or maybe best of all, the way my heart raced every time he got close. We spent more time together, even if it was just walking home from school or studying in the library after class. He always had a book with him, usually something old and worn, filled with dog-eared pages and scribbled notes in the margins. I never asked what he liked so much about them, but I watched the way his fingers traced the words like they meant something to him, like they were more than just stories. One day, he let me borrow one. It was called The Picture of Dorian Gray *, and I read it cover to cover in 2 nights, not because I understood it completely, but because I wanted to know what he saw in it. What made him love it so much? We talked late into the night sometimes, sending messages back and forth when we couldn't see each other in person. At first, it was about school, who art teachers reminded us of, which assignments were impossible, who cheated on the last test without getting caught. But slowly, it turned into something else. He asked me about my favorite memories from before I moved here. About whether I missed the place I used to call home. About what I thought happened after you died. I didn't always have answers, but he listened anyway. Like whatever I said mattered. There was this one night where I almost told him everything. We were sitting under the tree behind the school after practice, watching the sky turn orange with the setting sun. The air was warm, the kind of warmth that makes you feel sleepy and safe at the same time. I remember looking at him and thinking how easy it would be to lean in, just a little closer, and kiss him. Just once. Just enough to know if he felt it too. But I didn't. I stayed still, hands folded in my lap, heart pounding like I'd already done something wrong. And then, one evening, he invited me over. It was innocent, he said. Just homework. His parents were out, and he didn't want to study alone. I hesitated, but not because I didn't want to go. I hesitated because I was afraid of what might happen if I did. Still, I said yes. His house was quiet when I arrived, the kind of quiet that felt like it was holding its breath. We sat on the floor of his room, books spread out around us, but neither of us opened them right away. He looked at me like he was trying to decide something. Then he reached over and touched my wrist, just for a second. A light brush of his fingers, barely even real. But it sent a shiver through me, like electricity crawling up my arm. I've been thinking about this for a while, he said softly. About what? I asked, even though I already knew. He didn't answer right away. Instead, he leaned in. Slow and careful, like he was giving me time to pull away if I wanted to. But I didn't. I stayed exactly where I was, frozen in place, heart hammering in my chest. And then, finally, his lips met mine. It was soft. So soft. Just a touch, barely more than a whisper of contact. But it was enough. Enough to make my whole body react, to make my stomach twist in a way I'd never felt before. I pulled away first, breathing hard, eyes wide. He looked just as shaken. I'm sorry, he said quickly, voice tight. I shouldn't have. No, I interrupted, surprising even myself. I wanted it too. We didn't talk about it again after that. Not really. We went back to pretending it hadn't happened, going through the motions of being friends. But everything had changed. I could feel it in the way he looked at me now, like he was afraid of getting too close, like he wanted to run but couldn't bring himself to leave. And I felt it too. The fear, the guilt, the thrill of knowing we weren't supposed to feel this way about each other, and yet, feeling it anyway. That night, I lay awake in bed, replaying the kiss over and over in my head. Wondering what it meant, wondering if he regretted it, wondering if I should pretend it never happened. But no matter how many times I tried to push it away, it stayed with me. Haunting me, tempting me, making me wish for something I wasn't sure I was allowed to have. What I didn't know was that someone else had noticed. Someone who didn't think we deserved the chance to figure it out on our own. And soon, everything would start falling apart. We told ourselves it was nothing. But we both knew, something had changed. After that night, everything felt different. Not just between us, but in the air around us, like the world had shifted and we were the only ones who noticed. Ethan started pulling away almost immediately, like he was trying to undo what had happened before it could go any further. He stopped waiting for me after class. He didn't text at night. When our eyes met in the hallway, he looked away faster than before. It hurt more than I expected. I told myself not to take it personally. Maybe he regretted it. Maybe he thought it was a mistake. Maybe he wasn't like me after all. But deep down, I knew better. I tried to move on. Tried to pretend I wasn't waiting for him to come back around. I even sat with other people at lunch, talked to girls who smiled too much and laughed at things I didn't say. But none of it felt right. None of it made my heart race the way his silence did. And then, one afternoon, just when I thought I was starting to forget, he found me. He caught me outside the gym after practice, standing alone by the fence as the sun dipped low behind the trees. I saw him walking toward me before I heard his voice, and for a second, I considered walking away. But I stayed, because no matter how much I wanted to be angry, I still wanted to hear what he had to say. "I need to talk to you," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Not here. Somewhere private." I hesitated. There was something in his tone that unsettled me, something tight, almost desperate. But I nodded anyway, because I couldn't say no to him. "Not yet." He led me through the empty halls, past classrooms that echoed with silence, down a narrow stairwell I'd never noticed before. The lights flickered overhead, casting long shadows against the walls. We ended up in the basement, a place most students avoided unless they had to. It smelled like dust and old paper, the kind of place where forgotten things went to rot. There were boxes stacked high, shelves filled with outdated textbooks, and a single wooden door at the end of the hall that probably hadn't been opened in years. Ethan closed the door behind us and leaned against it, like he needed the support to stay standing. His face was pale, his hands shaking slightly at his sides. "I don't know how else to say this," he began, voice cracking under the weight of whatever he was about to tell me. "My uncle knows." The words hit me like a punch to the gut. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. Couldn't think. Just stared at him like I hadn't heard him right. "What?" My voice came out hoarse, barely more than a whisper. "He knows about us," Ethan said, eyes darting around the room like someone might be listening. "He's known for a while." I took a step back, the cold cement floor pressing hard against my sneakers. "How?" "I don't know exactly. But he confronted me last week. Said he saw us talking too much. That he noticed the way we looked at each other." Ethan swallowed hard. "He told me to stay away from you." I felt sick. Like the floor had dropped out from under me and I was falling, fast and hard, with nowhere to land. "That's insane," I muttered, shaking my head. "He can't just." "He can," Ethan cut in, sharper than he meant to. "And he will." I stared at him, searching for some sign that this was a joke. That he was messing with me. But there was nothing. No smirk. No hesitation. Just fear. "What did he say exactly?" I asked, forcing myself to stay calm. Ethan ran a hand through his hair, pacing now. That he wouldn't tolerate that kind of behavior in his school. That if I didn't stop seeing you, there would be consequences. He threatened to tell my parents. "To make sure you got expelled," he said. Ethan trailed off, jaw clenched. "What?" I pressed, stepping closer. "He said that people like us don't get happy endings." The words hung between us like smoke, thick, suffocating. I felt them settle deep in my chest, curling around something fragile inside me. "And you believed him?" I asked, my voice quieter now. "I didn't have a choice," Ethan shot back, frustration creeping into his tone. "You don't know what it's like. You don't live with him. You don't see the way he looks at me sometimes, like he's already decided what I'm worth." I didn't respond. I couldn't. Because I understood, in a way I didn't want to admit. I understood fear. I understood what it meant to feel like you weren't allowed to exist the way you were. Ethan stepped closer, lowering his voice. "I wanted to tell you sooner. I didn't know how. I was scared." "Of what?" I asked, meeting his gaze. "Him, me, yourself. All of it," he admitted. "I'm scared of losing everything. Of disappointing my parents. Of getting kicked out. Of being alone." His honesty hit me harder than I expected. Because I felt the same way. Terrified. Trapped. Like we were two boys standing at the edge of something we didn't know how to survive. I reached for his hand without thinking, fingers brushing his. He didn't pull away. "We don't have to do this alone," I said softly. Ethan's eyes searched mine, looking for something, hope, maybe. Or permission to believe that maybe, just maybe, we could fight this together. But before either of us could say anything else, a sound echoed through the basement, footsteps above us. Heavy. Deliberate. We both froze. Ethan's grip tightened around my hand. Then, From somewhere upstairs, a voice called out. "Ethan, where are you?" It was him, Mr. Langley. And he was looking for us. That was the first time I saw real fear in his eyes. And I would see it again, much worse than that. The footsteps above us were slow, deliberate, like he wasn't just searching for us, but enjoying the chase. My heart pounded so hard I could feel it in my ears, a loud, frantic rhythm that drowned out every other sound. Ethan's face had gone pale, his fingers still wrapped around mine, trembling slightly. For a moment, neither of us moved. Neither of us breathed. We just stood there in the dim basement light, listening to the echo of Mr. Langley's voice as it bounced off the empty hallways above. "Ethan," he called again, calmer this time, almost conversational. "I know you're down here." There was no way he could have known. No way he'd followed us. But somehow, he had. Somehow, he always did. Ethan's grip tightened on my hand, and I saw something shift behind his eyes, not just fear, but resignation. Like he already knew how this was going to end. "We have to go," I whispered, pulling him toward the door at the far end of the basement. It was rusted, barely hanging on its hinges, but it was our only way out. But before we could move, the basement door creaked open above us. A single beam of light spilled down the stairs, casting long shadows across the dusty floor. Mr. Langley stepped into view slowly, hands clasped behind his back like he was giving us a chance to explain ourselves. He didn't look angry. That was what scared me the most. He looked calm, in control. "I thought I told you to stay away from him," he said, his voice smooth, measured. Ethan stiffened beside me, his whole body rigid with tension. I wanted to say something, to deny everything, to pretend we were just studying or helping clean up old books or anything that wouldn't make this feel like a crime. But I couldn't find the words. All I could do was stand there, frozen, watching as the man who ran this school stared at us like we were something broken that needed fixing. "You don't understand," Ethan finally managed, his voice shaking. "It's not. It's exactly what I think it is, Mr. Langley interrupted, stepping further down the stairs. His shoes clicked against the concrete, each one louder than the last. "And I won't allow it." He stopped a few feet away, close enough that I could see the sharp lines of his face, the coldness in his eyes. He looked at Ethan first, then at me, and for the first time since I'd met him, I felt something more than discomfort, I felt hatred. Not the kind that burned hot and exploded in shouts and accusations, but the quiet, calculating kind. The kind that built walls and made rules and punished people without ever raising a hand. "Come with me," he said to Ethan, ignoring me completely. Ethan didn't move. "Now, Mr. Langley added, sharper this time. Still, Ethan didn't budge. He looked at me, eyes wide with something I couldn't name. Fear, desperation, maybe even apology. "I'm not going anywhere without him," Ethan said, voice stronger now. Mr. Langley sighed, like this was all very tiring. Then he turned to me. "You should leave," he said simply. "Before this gets worse for you." I wanted to. God, I wanted to walk away, pretend none of this had happened, go back to pretending I didn't feel things I wasn't supposed to feel. But I couldn't. Because if I walked away now, I'd be proving him right. Proving that whatever this was between us, whatever we were, wasn't worth fighting for. So I stayed. And Mr. Langley noticed. His jaw tightened. His lips pressed into a thin line. Then he took a step closer to me, close enough that I could smell the faint scent of cologne mixed with something else, authority, maybe. Or control. "This isn't your fight," he said lowly. "Walk away now, and I'll forget this ever happened." I swallowed hard. "You can't just erase this." His smile was slow, almost sad. "Watch me." Then he turned back to Ethan. "You know what's at stake." Ethan looked like he might cry. I reached for his hand again, holding it tighter this time. "Don't let him do this." Ethan's breath hitched. He looked between us, between me and the uncle who raised him, the man who held his future in his hands. And then, slowly, he pulled away. I felt the loss immediately. Like something inside me cracked. "I'm sorry," he whispered, eyes full of pain. And then he followed Mr. Langley upstairs, leaving me alone in the dark. From that day on, everything changed. The whispers started the next morning. Kids in the hallway would glance at me, then quickly look away when they caught me watching. Teachers who used to smile at me now avoided eye contact. Even the janitor gave me a strange look as he swept the halls. I didn't need anyone to tell me what was happening, the message was clear. I was different. And in this school, different wasn't allowed. At lunch, I sat alone. No one approached me, not even the kids I used to talk to. It was like I'd been erased overnight, like someone had drawn an invisible line around me and warned everyone not to cross it. Ethan didn't show up to class that week. Rumors spread fast, some said he got sick, others claimed he transferred schools. But I knew the truth. He was being punished for loving me. I tried calling him, texting, nothing, just silence. And then, one night, I found the file. I don't know what possessed me to sneak back into the school. Maybe I was desperate, maybe I was stupid, but something inside me refused to believe that it was over. That we were over. I climbed through a broken window near the back entrance, heart pounding the entire time. I didn't know where I was going, just that I needed answers. I wandered through the empty hallways, past classrooms filled with sleeping desks and forgotten chalkboards. The silence was deafening. When I reached Mr. Langley's office, something told me to check his desk. I didn't expect to find anything. I thought I'd get caught before I even opened a drawer. But when I pulled out the bottom file cabinet, I saw it, a thick folder labeled Confidential, Student Records. Inside were pages upon pages of notes, reports, surveillance logs, emails, everything. My name was on them. Ethan's too. They had been tracking us since the beginning. Every time we talked too long. Every note we passed. Every moment we spent together outside of class. They documented it all. And worse, there were reports about Ethan. About how his parents were being pressured to send him somewhere, to get help. Somewhere that promised to fix boys like him. I read until my hands shook. Until my vision blurred. Until I couldn't take it anymore. And then I realized something. This wasn't just about us. There were other names. Other students. Boys. Girls. Teenagers who had once walked these halls, just like me. Teenagers who had disappeared, just like Ethan. And suddenly, I understood. This wasn't just a warning. This was a pattern. And I was next. He wasn't just watching us. He was preparing for us. The file felt heavier in my hands than it should have, like it carried the weight of every secret this school had buried. I stood frozen in Mr. Langley's office, heart slamming against my ribs, eyes scanning the pages as if they might explain how things got to this point. There were dates, notes on conversations we didn't know were being overheard, and even transcripts from phone calls Ethan and I thought were private. It was all there, proof that we hadn't been paranoid. Proof that we'd been hunted long before we even knew we were prey. I wanted to scream, to tear the papers apart, to throw them in his face and demand answers. But more than anything, I wanted to find Ethan. I didn't know where he was. His house. A facility somewhere. Locked away by a man who thought love could be corrected with silence and fear. The thought made me sick. I shoved the file under my jacket and slipped out of the office the same way I came in, moving fast through the empty hallways, my breath shallow, my pulse racing. The second I hit the parking lot, I ran. Not toward home. Toward Ethan's. His house was dark when I arrived, but I didn't care. I pounded on the door until someone finally answered. His mother, her eyes tired, her lips tight with worry. "Is he here?" I asked before she could say anything. She hesitated. Just for a second. But that was enough. "He's not allowed to see you," she said softly, like she hated the words as much as I did. "Please," I begged. "I need to talk to him." She looked past me, scanning the street like someone might be watching. Then she stepped outside, closing the door behind her. "You don't understand what you've done," she whispered. "What this has done to him." "I do," I said quickly. "That's why I'm here. I found something. Something that proves everything." Her expression shifted, confusion, then fear. "I can't let you in," she said, voice trembling now. "His father, his uncle, they won't allow it." "Then let me talk to him," I insisted. "Just for a minute." She shook her head. "They took him away." The words hit me like a punch to the gut. "What do you mean?" "They sent him somewhere, to get help." She swallowed hard. "To fix him." "No," I breathed. "No, you can't believe that. You can't actually think." "I don't," she cut in, eyes flashing with something close to anger. "But I don't have a choice." And just like that, she turned back toward the door. I reached out, grabbing her wrist gently. "Please." If you don't believe it, then help me stop it. She stared at me for a long moment. Then, quietly, she pulled free and disappeared inside, leaving me alone in the cold night air. I didn't sleep that night. I couldn't. All I could do was read through the file again and again, searching for any clue about where Ethan might be. There were names mentioned, doctors, therapists, schools that specialized in corrective programs. One name kept coming up, Cedar Grove Institute. No website, no public records, just whispers in old emails and meeting minutes. I needed answers, and I needed them fast. The next day, I skipped school and went straight to the library, using one of the old computers to dig deeper. I typed in every variation of the name I could think of, clicking through dead links and forum posts filled with horror stories. That's when I found it, a post from someone named Anonymous 1987, dated nearly 10 years ago. They took my brother away. Said he needed help. He never came back. They called it therapy. It was prison. If you're reading this and you still have time, run. Don't wait. Don't fight. Just run. My hands shook as I closed the laptop. This wasn't just about Ethan. This was about boys like him. Boys like me. Kids who loved the wrong people and paid the price. I couldn't let that happen to him. So I did the only thing I could. I went to confront Ethan's parents again. I showed them the file. I told them what I'd found. I begged them to stop this before it was too late. But they wouldn't listen. Not until I gave them the final piece of the puzzle. A letter. From Ethan. It had been hidden in the file, a personal note addressed to his mother, written in shaky handwriting. Mom, I don't know if you'll ever read this. I don't even know if you'll want to. But I need you to know the truth. I'm not broken. I don't need fixing. I just want to be happy. Please, don't let them take that away from me. She cried when she read it. Actually cried. And for the first time, I saw something shift in her. A crack in the wall she'd built around herself. Later that night, she called me. They're bringing him home tomorrow, she whispered. For now, I didn't ask questions. I just thanked her. And when Ethan finally walked through the front door the next afternoon, thin and quiet and barely holding himself together, I didn't hesitate. I pulled him into my arms and held on tight. He didn't speak at first. Just clung to me like I was the only real thing left in the world. I thought I'd never see you again, he whispered after a long silence. I wouldn't let that happen, I said. I won't. He pulled back just enough to look at me. His eyes were red, tired, haunted. But there was something else there too, hope. And maybe, just maybe, defiance. Because that's when he said it. We have to fight. I nodded without hesitation. We will. We spent the next few days gathering everything we could, copies of the files, screenshots of emails, recordings we'd managed to make during our time together. We weren't sure what we'd do with it yet. But we knew we couldn't stay silent anymore. Mr. Langley would come for us again. Of that, we had no doubt. But this time, we'd be ready. Because we weren't just fighting for ourselves anymore. We were fighting for everyone who had ever been told they weren't allowed to love. And we weren't going to lose. We were just kids. But sometimes, kids are the only ones brave enough to speak the truth. The plan wasn't something we made lightly. It wasn't born from a single moment of bravery or some dramatic declaration under moonlight. It was slow, careful, painfully real. We knew what we were up against, not just Mr. Langley, but a system that had been built to silence people like us for years. He had power, influence, friends in places we couldn't even begin to reach. But we had something he didn't. Proof. And more than that, we had each other. We started small. Late at night, Ethan and I would meet in secret, going over everything we had gathered, emails, notes, recordings, even the file I'd stolen from Mr. Langley's office. We organized it all, making copies, saving them in multiple places so if one got destroyed, we still had backups. We wrote down every detail we could remember, every time he'd watched us, every warning he gave, every threat he made. We needed it to be undeniable, irrefutable, but we also knew that just having evidence wouldn't be enough. We needed someone who could help us use it. Someone who could make people listen. That's when we found her. Her name was Ms. Delaney, a former student turned investigative journalist. She had written about schools like ours before, exposing programs designed to correct students who didn't fit into neat little boxes. Her articles had caused scandals, lawsuits, even policy changes. If anyone could help us, it was her. Reaching out was terrifying. We sent an anonymous message through her website, attaching a few snippets of our evidence, just enough to prove we weren't lying, but not enough to give away everything. We waited for days, nerves eating at us with every passing hour. And then, finally, she responded. I want to hear your story. Meet me at the library on Friday. Come alone. Bring everything you have. We didn't tell anyone where we were going. Not Ethan's parents. Not our friends. No one. We met Ms. Delaney in a quiet corner of the library, surrounded by dusty shelves and half-read books. She looked older than I expected, her hair streaked with gray, eyes sharp behind round glasses. She listened without interrupting as we told her everything, from the first time we saw each other, to the basement, to the threats, to the file. She asked questions, took notes, watched us closely. When we finished, she sat back and exhaled slowly. This isn't just about you two, she said. This is part of something bigger. We already knew that, but hearing it out loud made it feel heavier somehow. I'll write about this, she continued. But I need more. Names, dates, witnesses. You're not the first, and you won't be the last. If we're going to do this right, we need to build a case strong enough to survive legal attacks. That's when we realized, this wasn't just about telling our story. This was about taking him down. So we went back to work. Late nights became longer. Meetings became more frequent. We reached out to other students, carefully, cautiously. Some refused to talk. Others were too scared. But a few came forward, kids who had gone through the same thing, who had been threatened, manipulated, broken. One girl, Sarah, told us how her girlfriend had disappeared after being reported to school officials. Another boy, Jordan, shared how his parents had been pressured to send him to a facility that promised to reorient him. Each story added weight to ours. Each voice made it harder to ignore. But with every step forward, the pressure grew. Mr. Langley must have sensed something was happening. The way he watched us changed, sharper now, more aggressive. He started pulling Ethan out of class for private meetings. He called my mother and told her I was causing trouble. He even tried to get the school board involved, spreading rumors about disruptive behavior and unauthorized access to school records. It was a warning. He knew we were coming for him. And he wasn't going to make it easy. One afternoon, after practice, I found Ethan waiting for me outside. His face was pale, his hands shaking slightly as he clutched a piece of paper. What happened? I asked immediately. My dad got a call today, he whispered. From Mr. Langley. I felt my stomach twist. He said if I don't stop spreading lies about him, they'll expel you. They'll say you hacked the school database. That you stole confidential files. That you're dangerous. That's not true, I said quickly. They don't care, Ethan replied, voice breaking. They'll ruin you. I stared at him, heart pounding. This was it. The moment we'd been afraid of. We can't stop now, I said firmly. If we back down, he wins. Ethan swallowed hard. What if he ruins us? I stepped closer, taking his hand. Then we burn with the truth. For a long moment, he just looked at me. Then, slowly, he nodded. We kept going, even when the threats got worse. Even when Ethan's parents stopped speaking to him. Even when teachers avoided us in the hallways. We kept going, because we knew something Mr. Langley never did. Love doesn't break easily. And neither do we. The day the article dropped, everything changed. It was published online early in the morning, just before school started. Students arrived with phones in their hands, reading, whispering, staring. Teachers avoided the topic. Administrators scrambled to contain the damage. The headline read, "Behind Closed Doors, How One School Principal Silenced LGBTQ+ Students for Years." Inside were our names, our stories, our proof. There were quotes from Ethan and me. From Sarah. From Jordan. From others who had suffered in silence. There were screenshots of emails. Transcripts of conversations. A list of students who had vanished. And worst of all, there was the letter Ethan had written to his mother, printed in full. People were furious. Parents demanded answers. Local news picked up the story. Social media exploded. And Mr. Langley, he vanished. The school released a statement saying he was on administrative leave pending investigation. But we all knew what that meant. He was running, and we had chased him out. But victory didn't come without cost. Ethan was pulled out of school the next week. His parents, overwhelmed by the fallout, decided to move. I was suspended for alleged hacking, even though no real evidence ever surfaced. My mom fought for me, but the damage was done. Still, we had done it. We had exposed the truth. And nothing could take that away from us. Not anymore. I thought it was over. But the real test was just beginning. The article had gone viral. That much was clear from the moment I opened my phone that morning. Notifications flooded in, messages from strangers, comments from people all over the world, some angry, some heartbroken, some grateful. The school had shut down access to social media on campus, but it didn't matter. Everyone already knew. Mr. Langley was gone. Suspended first, then quietly removed from his position while the investigation rolled forward like a storm no one could stop. Parents were furious. Teachers whispered behind closed doors. Students who once avoided me now came up and said things like, "Thank you," or, "I'm proud of you." But none of it felt real. Not yet. Ethan left town a week later. His parents packed everything quickly, without explanation, and moved him somewhere far away. He promised he'd keep in touch. Said we'd figure out how to make this work. But distance is cruel in ways you don't understand until you're living it. At first, we texted every night. Then it became less frequent. Then the messages stopped altogether. I told myself he was just adjusting. That he needed time. That he still loved me. But deep down, I knew something had changed. Without him, I felt untethered. Like I was floating through the days, waiting for something to ground me again. School became unbearable. Even though the administration tried to move on like nothing had happened, the weight of what we exposed lingered in the air. Some students supported me. Others made it clear they thought I had gone too far. Whispers followed me in the hallways. Looks lingered too long. A few teachers started treating me differently, not with cruelty, exactly, but with caution, like I was dangerous simply for speaking the truth. And then came the consequences. They started small. A note slipped into my locker warning me to back off before someone gets hurt. A locker that had been broken into, books scattered across the floor. Then came the threats online, anonymous messages filled with venom, telling me I deserved to suffer for ruining a man's life. One message even included a photo of my house. Someone had been watching me. I showed the messages to my mom, but she didn't know what to do. She wanted to protect me, but there was only so much she could do against shadows. She begged me to stay quiet, to let the story die before it consumed me completely. But silence had never saved anyone like us. Silence was what allowed men like Mr. Langley to thrive in the first place. Still, the pressure mounted. I was called into the principal's office, not Mr. Langley's replacement, but a woman named Drive Hayes, who spoke in careful, measured tones and pretended to be on my side. She offered counseling, suggested I take a break from school if I was feeling overwhelmed. When I refused, she leaned forward and said, "You should be careful, son. People don't always forget the ones who expose them." It wasn't a threat, not directly, but it didn't need to be. That night, I sat alone in my room, staring at the ceiling, wondering if I had made a mistake. If I had ruined everything for nothing. If Ethan was better off without me. Then my phone buzzed. A message from him. "Can we talk?" I stared at the screen for a long time before responding. Yes. We video called minutes later. He looked different, thinner, tired, eyes shadowed with something I couldn't name. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. We just watched each other, trying to find the pieces of ourselves that still fit together. "I miss you," he finally said. My throat tightened. "I miss you too," he exhaled, running a hand through his hair. "This isn't easy for me either." "I know," I whispered. There was a pause. Then he said, "My parents are making me see someone." "A therapist?" I asked, already dreading the answer. "More like conversion therapy." The words hit me like a punch to the gut. "No," I breathed. "No, you can't. They're giving me a choice," he interrupted, voice low. "Either I go willingly, or they cut me off completely. No money. No home. Nothing." I couldn't breathe. "You don't have to do this," I said, desperation creeping into my voice. "You can run. You can come here. We'll figure it out." "I wish it were that simple," he said softly. "But I'm scared. Of losing everything. Of being alone." You wouldn't be alone, I insisted. I would be with you. He looked at me then, really looked at me, like he was searching for something inside me. And maybe he found it. Because after a long silence, he nodded. I want to believe that, he said. I do. But right now, I don't know if I'm strong enough. You are, I told him. You're stronger than you think. He smiled sadly. Maybe someday. And then the call ended. Weeks passed. The story faded from headlines. The school went back to pretending it was normal. But nothing about this place was normal anymore. I kept fighting, even when it felt pointless. Gave interviews. Spoke at rallies. Shared our story with anyone who would listen. And slowly, things started to change. Other students came forward. Lawsuits were filed. The state launched an official investigation into schools with similar practices. Mr. Langley disappeared completely, leaving behind a trail of broken lives and unanswered questions. But none of it mattered if I lost Ethan. So I did the only thing I could. I waited. Watched. Hoped. And then, one day, there was a knock on my door. I opened it without thinking. And there he stood. Thin. Tired. Eyes full of pain. But free. I ran, he said simply. And I pulled him into my arms, holding on like I would never let go again. Because this was only the beginning. And we were finally ready to face it together. If this story moved you, hit that like button. Share it with someone who needs to feel seen. And if you're still searching for your truth, remember, you're not alone. Years have passed since that day in the basement. Since the fear, the silence, the moments that changed everything. I'm older now. Wiser. Stronger in ways I never thought I would be. Life didn't suddenly become easy after we exposed Mr. Langley and everything he tried to hide. The fallout was messy. Painful. There were days I wished I could go back to being invisible, to pretending everything was fine just so I wouldn't have to fight anymore. But then I'd remember why we fought in the first place. Not just for Ethan. Not just for me. But for every kid who ever felt like they had to hide who they loved. Who they were. Who they wanted to be. We weren't perfect. We made mistakes. We got hurt. We lost people along the way. But we also found something most people spend their whole lives searching for, real love. The kind that doesn't care about rules or expectations. The kind that survives even when the world tries to erase it. Ethan and I didn't have a fairy tale ending. Not the kind you see in movies or read about in books. Our journey was filled with pain, doubt, long silences, and nights where we weren't sure we'd make it through. But we did. Together. Slowly, painfully, beautifully, we did. He came back to me not because it was easy, but because it was right. Because no matter how far apart we were, no matter how many times we doubted ourselves, there was always a part of us that belonged to each other. And that part never stopped fighting. Today, we live in a city far away from the school, from the hallways that once held our secrets, from the man who tried to destroy us. We've built something new here, not perfect, but honest. We don't hide who we are. We don't apologize for loving each other. And sometimes, when I look at him across the room, I still feel that same rush I felt the first time he smiled at me in class. Like maybe the universe had already decided we'd find each other, even before we knew we needed to. I wish I could tell you that the world is different now. That schools don't still try to silence kids like us. That parents don't still send their children away hoping they'll come back, fixed. That boys like Ethan and me don't still grow up believing they're broken simply for loving someone of the same gender. But I can't lie. Some things haven't changed. But some things have. Because of stories like ours. Because of people like you, watching this video right now. Because of every voice that refuses to stay quiet. Every heart that beats too loudly to be ignored. Every teenager who looks around and realizes they're not alone. That they never were. That's why we keep telling our stories. Not just to survive, but to remind others that they can too. So if you're watching this and you feel like you don't belong anywhere, know that you do. You belong in this world, exactly as you are. You deserve love without conditions. Safety without silence. Happiness without apology. And if anyone ever tries to tell you otherwise, you fight. You speak. You rise. Just like we did. Thank you for listening. Now go out there and live your truth. It's worth every battle.